The thermal scanner showed 3 predator signatures and 1 human. The human was walking toward all 3. Ren watched from above the tree line, hidden inside a cloaked observation shell no bigger than a storage pod. His partner Lu sat beside him, silent, eyes fixed on the same readout. The forest below was dark. Pre-dawn dark, the kind where nothing could see anything unless it had spent years learning how. The human had spent years learning how. Her name was in the mission file. Dara Okafor, age 34. Occupation listed as Wildlife Ranger, Central Forest Region, Central Africa. 11 months of long-range observation had flagged her as a viable close-range subject because she was alone. She was deep in territory classified as high danger, and she moved through it every single day. Ren had read the file 3 times. He still did not fully understand what a wildlife ranger was. The Velthri had no equivalent. The closest translation his language unit offered was something like Watcher of Beasts, and that felt wrong in a way he could not yet explain. He watched her now on the thermal feed, a warm orange shape moving between the cold blue of the trees. She was not running. She was not even walking fast. She moved the way water moves downhill, finding the path without fighting anything. The 3 predator signatures were large cats, 2 resting, 1 moving parallel to her route, about 40 meters to her left. Ren waited for her pace to change. The T did not change. He leaned closer to the screen. The moving cat was closing the gap slightly, not hunting, just moving the way large cats do when they're aware of something nearby and have not yet decided what to think about it. 30 meters now. The human's heat signature stayed steady, the orange glow of her body unchanged, no spike in surface temperature that would signal a stress response. Lu spoke quietly beside him. Scanner malfunction. Ren checked it. The scanner was running clean. He said so. Lu made a sound that in Velthri meant something between disagreement and discomfort. She pulled up the calibration log and ran it manually. The results came back the same. The instrument was working. The human was calm. Below, Dara stopped walking. Ren tensed. She had stopped near the base of a large tree, and for a moment he thought she had heard something, or sensed the cat, or finally shown the response his scanner was waiting for. He held his breath. She crouched down. She was looking at the ground, at something in the mud near the tree root. She stayed crouched for a long time, longer than made any sense to Ren, and then she did something he had not expected. She smiled. Not a baring of teeth. Not an aggression signal. His expression analysis program flagged it as positive emotional response, category unclear. She reached into the bag over her shoulder and pulled out a small worn book and something to write with. She opened the book and began to draw. Ren stared. Lu leaned in. What is she drawing? I don't know. He angled the visual sensor down as far as it would go. The image was grainy at this distance, but he could make out a shape on the page. A large print in the mud. She was drawing the footprint of one of the big cats. Carefully, with real attention, like it mattered, the cat that had been moving parallel to her route had stopped. It was 45 meters away now, sitting, watching her the way cats watch things they are not sure about. It made no move toward her. She had not looked up at it once. Ren ran the stress marker scan again. Heart rate normal for human baseline. Cortisol indicators flat. Breathing regular, but he sat back. The Velthri fear assessment protocol was built on a simple truth that had held across every species they had ever observed. When a living thing encounters a predator, it responds. Fight, freeze, flee, or signal. Every species did one of these. Even species that had never seen a predator before seemed to carry the old knowledge in their bodies. The scanner had never returned a flat line in the presence of an active predator signature. Not once, across 61 documented assessments. 62 now. And the line was flat. She knows it is there, Lu said. She has to know. Ren thought about that. He thought about the way she had stopped and crouched without any urgency. The way she had pulled out her book. The way the smile came up slow and easy, like she had found something she had been hoping to find. He thought about what it meant to smile at a predator's footprint. She knows, he said. That is not the issue. Lu looked at him. Then what is the issue? Ren watched Dara close her book, tuck it back in her bag, and stand up. She looked at the ground once more, then at the trees around her, and then she kept walking. Same pace, same quiet movement. The cat watched her go. After a moment, it looked away. The issue, Ren said slowly, is that she is not afraid of it. She is glad it is healthy. He filed his preliminary report as the forest began to lighten around the first edges of dawn. In the subject field, where the protocol asked him to classify the human response on a scale from fearful to aggressive, he left the box empty at the bottom. In the notes section, he wrote 2 words, subject, anomalous. By mid-morning, the forest had grown loud. Birds called from every level of the canopy. Insects filled the gaps between the calls. The air was thick and wet and warm, and below the observation shell, Dara Okafor moved through all of it like she had been built for exactly this place. Ren tracked her from above. Lu had gone quiet after their conversation at dawn, which Ren had learned over many missions meant she was thinking about something she did not want to say out loud yet. He let her think. He watched the human. Dara had covered a lot of ground since sunrise. She stopped regularly, always briefly, always purposefully. A camera mounted on a tree. A water source she tested with a small tool and recorded results in her book. A stretch of ground near a dry creek bed where she crouched and studied the soil and the bent grass and the displaced stones the way someone else might read a page of writing. She was reading the forest. That was the only way Ren could frame it. She was reading it the way his people read mission briefs, looking for information, building a picture, noting what had changed since the last time she looked. Then she reached the river that was not a wide river, maybe 12 meters across, shallow and quick in the middle. Dara came down the bank to a flat, muddy area she had clearly used before. There were boot prints from previous days pressed into the soft ground near the water. She stopped at the edge and looked out at her usual crossing point that a crocodile was there. A large one, stretched out on the mud flat on the far side, absolutely still in the way large crocodiles go still when they are warm and comfortable and not interested in moving for anything. Ren watched Dara look at it, his scanner waited. This was a genuine predator, not a large cat that might ignore a human, but a species his mission file described as responsible for significant human casualties in this region. She was 3 meters from the water. The crocodile had not moved. The situation had every mark of the protocol used to generate a fear response. Dara watched the crocodile for about 10 seconds. Then she turned and walked upstream without any visible change in her expression. Ren looked at Lu. Lu was already pulling up the data. No cortisol spike. No pace increase. No vocalization. She paused. She rerouted. I saw. Rerouting is an avoidance behavior. Avoidance can be logged as fear adjacent. Ren thought about this. Her breathing did not change, he said. Her pace did not change. She looked at it the same way she looks at everything else. Then she chose a different route. That is avoidance. That is sense, Ren said. She did not want to disturb it. She went around because going through would have been unnecessary. Lu did not answer that. She marked the event in the log as inconclusive and closed the file. Dara found a narrower crossing upstream and went through the water without hesitation, boots and all, and climbed the far bank and kept moving. She stopped once to note something about the crossing in her book. Then she sat at the top of the bank, and it was a simple meal. Something from a container she carried. She ate slowly, watching the river below her, watching the trees across the water, looking comfortable in a way that was beginning to feel deliberate to Ren, as if comfort was something she had practiced. She heard it before Ren's sensors picked it up. He noticed her head come up first, a slow turn to her left, no snap of alarm in it, just attention. 2 seconds later, the undergrowth about 20 meters into the trees shifted, and a young forest elephant pushed through into the open, moving toward the river. It was adolescent, maybe a third grown, moving with the slightly uncoordinated confidence of a young animal that had not yet been tested. It stopped when it saw Dara and looked at her with the direct, curious stare that large animals use when they are assessing something unfamiliar. Dara stopped eating. She did not stand. She did not reach for anything. She turned slightly toward the elephant and went very still, and the expression on her face was the same one she had worn over the footprint that morning. She watched it for a long time. The elephant decided she was not interesting and went to the river and drank. Dara went back to eating. Rin realized only then that he had been holding his breath. He checked his own monitor out of habit and looked at the numbers. His stress markers were elevated. A moderate but clear spike, the kind the protocol logged as awareness response in the presence of an unknown large animal. He looked at Dara's reading, flat. A small uptick when she first heard the movement, barely a ripple, and then back to baseline before the elephant even appeared. His communicator opened. Coordinator Besh, calling from the ship, voice carrying the clipped impatience of someone who managed schedules and did not like it when things ran over. Report, Ren. Where are we? Assessment is ongoing. The Council wants a classification. The window closes in 22 hours. Dangerous or harmless. That is the framework. Use it. The channel closed. Rin looked down at Dara, who had finished her meal and was writing her book again, probably noting the elephant, probably recording its size and direction and whether it looked healthy. Dangerous or harmless. He looked at the numbers on his scanner. He looked at the woman sitting on the riverbank writing careful notes about an elephant that could have killed her, but he could not pick one. The outpost was small, that a single structure at the forest edge, walls of old pale wood, a metal roof gone the color of rust, a narrow porch that looked out over a clearing before the trees began again. There were equipment cases stacked beside the door. A clothesline, a rain barrel, a hand-painted sign above the door frame that Ren's translation unit rendered as something close to pay attention. Dara arrived as the light changed from afternoon to early evening, coming out of the trees at the far edge of the clearing and crossing to the porch without hurrying. She pulled off her boots before she went inside. This detail lodged in Ren's mind without his fully understanding why. She had just walked all day through a forest full of things that could kill her, and she pulled off her boots before she went inside. Like she was keeping the wild part outside. Like there was a line, and she knew where it was to he, and Lou repositioned the observation shell to a hover point above the clearing, angled to see through the outpost window. The inside was lit by a single hanging light. A table, a narrow shelf of equipment, boxes of supplies, a cot in the corner with a blanket folded flat. Everything in its place, everything used, nothing wasted. Dara sat at the table and opened a flat device and began working through what looked like images. Ren's visual sensors zoomed in carefully. Camera trap images, the small automatic cameras she had checked in the field today. She moved through them quickly at first, cataloging, and then she slowed down on a series from the eastern edge of her mapped area. Her expression changed. Not to fear. He knew now that fear was not the word for any of the things her face did. This was something harder and quieter. Ren's analysis program offered him several translations, and he looked at the closest match and sat with it. Grim resolve. There were people in the images. Not rangers. People moving through the trees at night, carrying things, moving in the careful way of people who did not want to be seen. Poachers, the mission file had taught him. People who came into the protected areas to take animals for money. Dara picked up her communicator and made a call. Ren could not hear the other side, but he watched her face and her words, and he understood the shape of the conversation. She was reporting, giving a location, a number, a direction of movement. Then she was listening. Then she said something short and closed the communicator. She had been told no, or not enough, or not yet, or the request had been filed somewhere to wait. He could not know the exact words, but the result was the same. She sat for a moment looking at the table. Then she pulled out a paper map and began marking it. She is going to go herself. Lou said. Yes, Ren said. That is irrational. Ren looked at Lou. I do not think she sees it that way. He watched Dara work for an hour. She ate something small at the table without really tasting it, focused on the map, on the notes she was building, on the plan she was quietly assembling from available pieces. When she was done, she folded the map carefully and set it beside her gear for morning. Then she stood and went outside to check the perimeter of the clearing. This was clearly a routine. She moved around the edges in a specific order, checking a few items, looking at the tree line, listening. Ren tracked her from above. She was thorough and quiet and unsurprised by everything she found. Then she stopped. She was at the near edge of the porch, facing outward, and she stopped moving completely. She did not look at the tree line. She did not look at the sky. She looked up at the specific area of empty air where Ren's cloaked observation shell was hovering. Ren did not breathe. The cloak was active. Full spectrum, full acoustic, no heat signature leak. She could not see the shell. He had run the cloak check himself 20 minutes ago. She could not see him. She looked directly at him for a count of 9 seconds. He counted. He could not help it. Then she went back inside. He heard Lou exhale beside him. Coincidence, Lou said. She was looking at the sky. People look at the sky. Ren said nothing. Through the window, he watched Dara move around the small inside of the outpost. She put her boots back by the door. She turned off the main light and clicked on a smaller one. She boiled water on a small burner and made 2 mugs of something that steamed in the dim light. Then she went to the door and opened it and set 1 mug on the outside step. She did not look up when she did it. She just set it down, carefully, on the wooden step. Then she went back inside and drank from her own mug, and after a while turned out the small light, and the outpost went dark. Ren looked at the mug on the step. The steam rose from it slowly and then faded as the liquid cooled in the evening air. The clearing was quiet. The trees were dark shapes beyond the edge of the light. Lou said again that it was coincidence, that she had made a second mug by mistake, or out of habit, or for no reason that had anything to do with them. Ren looked at the mug. He looked at where it was placed, centered on the step, handle turned out, the way you set something down for someone else. That he did not answer Lou. He had no answer yet. He only knew that the mug was there, and it had not been there before, and he did not think it was a coincidence at all. The council chamber on the Velthary ship was small and cold the way official rooms are always cold, designed for decisions and not for comfort. Elder Sova stood at the head of the display table and watched the footage Ren had transmitted. She watched it without speaking, which was how she watched everything. The other 2 council members present had already offered their opinions and were now waiting for hers. They had both said the same thing in different words. Abort the assessment. The human was aware of their presence. The mission was compromised. Sova said nothing and watched. She watched Dara in the forest at dawn, crouching over the footprint. She watched the smile. She watched the crocodile rerouting and the elephant and the flat scanner lines running steady beneath all of it. She watched Dara at the table in the outpost, her face going hard and quiet over the camera trap images, and then building her plan alone when the help she asked for did not come. Then she watched Dara set the mug on the step. Sova paused the footage there. For a moment the room was very still. The mug sat on the step in the frozen image. The steam caught mid-rise. The handle turned outward toward the dark clearing. Coordinator Besh spoke from the communication panel at the far wall. He had been listening from the ship's operations level, too impatient to wait for a summary. The subject has identified a surveillance presence. Protocol 17 requires immediate withdrawal. There is no ambiguity here, Elder. We pull the team and we close the file. Sova did not look at the panel. What does Protocol 17 exist to prevent, Besh? A pause. Contamination of the assessment. If the subject knows they are observed, the data, Sova said, is the most complete we have gathered in 62 assessments. She looked at the frozen image again. Play the rest. The footage moved forward. The mug cooled. The light inside the outpost went out. The clearing stayed quiet. Cut to Ren's report text on a secondary screen. The words he had filed just before calling in. Sova read the key line aloud. Subject may be aware of observation. Subject response to possible awareness. Left a mug of tea on the external step. Went to bed. She set the report down. She thought something was out there. And she made it tea. One of the council members shifted in his chair. That could be ritual behavior. Offering to forest spirits, something of that kind. It does not necessarily indicate. She turned the handle outward, Sova said. Silence. That was the detail that no cultural interpretation could fully absorb. Turned toward the clearing. Toward the unseen watcher. A gesture so ordinary and so precise that it sat in the chest like something heavy. Ren's voice came through the open channel from the observation shell. He had been waiting, not interrupting, which Sova noted and appreciated. She asked him to speak. I want to ask something, he said. Not as a report. As a question. Ask. Every danger species we have assessed has had one thing in common. When they encounter something unknown, they try to establish dominance. They display. They advance. They make themselves large. A pause. What if the absence of that behavior is not an absence of danger? What if it is a different relationship with danger entirely? What if she is calm not because she does not feel fear, but because she has lived beside frightening things for so long that she has learned how to carry it without showing it? The council member who had spoken shifted again. That is speculation. Yes, Ren said. I know it is. I just wanted to ask it. Sova looked at Besh's name on the communication panel. She looked at the two council members. She looked at the frozen image of the mug on the step. Pull back to secondary distance, she said to Ren. Hold position. Do not make contact. The council will vote in the morning. Understood. But Ren. She waited until she was sure he was listening. The question you asked is a good question. Keep asking it. The channel went quiet. The council members gathered their things and left. Besh signed off without another word. Sova stayed. She sat alone in the cold room and pulled the footage back to the beginning, to the very first frame, Ren's thermal readout in the pre-dawn dark, 3 predator signatures, and 1 human moving toward all 3 without changing her pace. She had spent 200 years building the fear assessment protocol. She had written most of it herself. After the 3rd apex contact, after they lost the colony at the outer rim and the 2 ships near the transit point and 11 of the 14 ambassadors who had tried to open dialogue with something that only understood aggression. The protocol was correct. It had kept them safe. Every dangerous species they had encountered had failed the assessment quickly and cleanly, all teeth and display and territorial signal. The protocol caught them every time. Until now. She watched Dara move through the dark forest, calm and purposeful and entirely at home in a place that should have been terrifying. She watched the smile over the footprint. She watched the handle of the mug, back on the ground, far below the ship. The image Ren had quietly sent in his final transmission of the night showed the step of the outpost in early darkness. There were 2 mugs on it now. The second one had appeared sometime after the light went out. Dara must have come back to the door in the dark and placed it there. She had not made a sound. Ren had noted. He had not seen her do it. It was simply there when he looked again. Sova sat with that for a long time, that in the morning, she told herself. They would vote in the morning. Ren made the decision somewhere in the last hour before dawn that he did not announce it. He did not file a request or open a channel to the ship or ask Lu for her opinion, because he already knew what Lu would say, and he understood her reasons, and he had thought about every one of them carefully. Then he reached for the cloak controls. Lu grabbed his arm. Not hard, but firmly, the grip of someone who knows they are watching something happen and cannot stop it, but needs to have tried. The council has not voted, she said. I know. If she reacts badly, if she signals, if this becomes an incident, then it becomes an incident, Ren said. And it will be my fault, and I will answer for it. He looked at her. But Lu, she put 2 mugs out. In the dark. She went back out in the dark and put a second one on that step. Lu held his arm for a moment longer. Then she let go. He dropped the shell to a landing point just inside the tree line at the clearing's eastern edge, low enough that he could step out onto the ground. He checked his suit. He checked his translator. He turned off the cloak. The observation shell sat visible at the tree line, a dull gray shape in the first gray light, and Ren stepped out and walked to the edge of the trees and stopped there and waited. The outpost was quiet. The 2 mugs were still on the step, cold now, long past whatever warmth they had held in the night. The clearing between him and the door was empty ground, damp grass, the open space of a decision he had already made and could not now take back. He waited. Inside the shell behind him, Lu had opened a live feed to the ship. He knew that. He did not look back. The door opened. Dara came out the way she did every morning, moving without hurry, carrying a fresh mug in both hands. She had her bag over one shoulder, gear ready for the day. She was already dressed for the forest. She stepped onto the porch and looked out at the clearing as she always did, and then she saw him. She stopped at Ren's scanner came alive in his earpiece, sudden and fast, every line spiking at once. And for one strange second, he thought finally the reading had come in, the fear response was there. He had found it at last. Then he looked at the numbers. The spike was his. His own stress markers flooding the sensor feed. His own heart rate, his own cortisol, his own body doing what bodies do when they stand in the open in front of the unknown. He was terrified. He was standing in a clearing in the dark gray dawn on a planet that was not his, and he was terrified. Dara had not moved. Her face had gone still and careful in the way Ren had come to understand meant she was paying close attention. She was looking at him the way she looked at the elephant, the way she looked at the cat prints in the mud. Full attention, real attention, not threat assessment. Something closer to curiosity. His translator was running. He had prepared words. He had 3 different opening statements drafted, formal contact language, careful phrasings from the protocol manual. He did not say any of them, that he could not find the beginning of any sentence. He stood at the tree line and said nothing and tried to hold still. Dara slowly crouched down and set her mug on the porch floor. Then she straightened. She took 1 step down off the porch into the clearing. She stopped. She waited that tea was the same thing he was doing. The mirror of it. She had stepped toward the unknown and stopped and was now simply present, not demanding anything, not retreating, just here, occupying the same morning air as the strange thing she had been quietly setting tea out for. Ren took 1 step forward out of the tree shadow. She did not move. He took another step. Still nothing. No signal. No retreat. Her hands were loose at her sides, and her face was calm, and she was watching him with those steady eyes that his scanner kept insisting were producing no stress response. And he was beginning to believe it now in a way that all the data had not quite made him believe it before. You could read a number. You could doubt a number. You could not doubt this. He stopped walking. He was 10 meters from her. He could see her clearly in the growing light. She was smaller than him, shorter, built lightly, nothing about her form that would indicate physical threat. She was breathing slowly. She was still looking at him. Behind her, on the porch, the 2 old mugs sat side by side on the step. Ren had no more steps planned. He had gotten to this point and had no protocol for what came after, no script, no approved next action. The manual did not cover this. The manual had never imagined this. He sat down. Not a combat crouch. Not a defensive posture. He simply lowered himself to the ground and sat in the damp grass. The way someone sits when they have been walking for a long time and have decided to stop. His knees folded under him, and he put his hands in his lap, and Dara looked at him for a long moment. Then she sat down too, right where she was, in the clearing, 10 meters away, cross-legged, easy like sitting in damp grass at dawn, was a perfectly ordinary thing to do when a being from another world had just appeared at your tree line. The forest woke up around them. Birds first, then insects, then the slow lightening of the sky from gray to the first pale color of morning. Neither of them spoke. There was no shared language yet to speak in, but they sat in the same morning, and that was enough for now. On the ship, in the cold council chamber, Elder Sova watched the live feed and said nothing for a very long time. The silence lasted a long time, and neither of them ended it badly. The sun came far enough up that the clearing lost its gray color and turned green and gold the way forest clearings do when the light finally finds them. Ren sat in the grass and watched the trees and watched Dara and tried to understand what was happening inside himself, which was difficult because he did not have good words for it in any language he knew on the ship. Lou had stopped protesting 10 minutes into the feed. She sat at the monitor now and watched with her hands folded and said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Dara was the one who spoke first. She spoke slowly, clearly, not loudly, the way someone speaks when they are not sure if they are being understood but want to be. Ren's translator caught the words and worked them over and gave him something close enough. She said she had known something was out there for 3 days. She said she had been watching whatever was watching her, the way she watched everything in the forest, quietly, from the corner of her attention, building a picture from small things. A stillness in the air that moved wrong. A weight in the dark above the tree line that had no wind to explain it. She said she figured if it had wanted to cause harm, it had 3 days to do it. So she left the light on. Ren's translator processed the last phrase twice, checking for idiom. Left the light on. It offered him 3 interpretations, and he took the one that felt right. She had left a signal. She had made it possible for whatever was out there to approach. Not because she was unafraid, because she had decided to make space for the possibility that something unknown did not have to be something dangerous. He raised his right hand, open, palm facing her. It was not a gesture from any protocol. It was not in the contact manual. It was simply the most honest thing his body knew how to do, the oldest shape of open hands, nothing held, nothing hidden. Dara looked at his hand. Then she raised hers the same way. On the ship, Coordinator Besh had been watching the feed from his operations post and had not spoken in 11 minutes. When he finally did speak, his voice had lost its clipped efficiency. He asked no question. He only said the words in a low, flat tone, as if reading them off a surface he did not quite believe. She mirrored him. In the council chamber, Elder Sova was sitting in the same chair she had been in most of the night. The two council members who had voted to abort the assessment in the morning had both been watching the feed from their quarters and had both sent her the same two-word message within minutes of each other. Full contact. Sova proved it. She did not feel triumph. She felt something quieter than that, something that lived further down, closer to the feeling she got standing at the edge of a very old place and understanding for the first time how old it really was. She had built the fear assessment protocol to protect her people. She believed in it. Every time it had worked, she had been glad of it. But the protocol had been built from fear. She understood that now, built from the memory of what the Apex contact had cost them, built from the need to never be surprised like that again. The protocol asked one question. Are they afraid? It had never thought to ask a different one. Are they brave? These are not the same question. She should have known that. She had lived long enough to know that the most careful, most precise tool still had the shape of the hand that made it. And her hands, when she built the protocol, had been full of grief. She would not dismantle the protocol. It had saved them too many times. But she would rewrite the opening, the definitions, the framework that told her teams what a passing result looked like. She would start with what she had watched this morning, a being from another world stepping out into the open before dawn with no weapon and no guarantee, and sitting down in the grass and waiting. She would start there at the clearing. Ren and Dara were still 10 meters apart. The hands had come down. They were just sitting now, and Ren was making small attempts with his translator, single words, the sounds of things around them, pointing to the trees, to the sky, to his own chest, and then to hers in the oldest vocabulary there was. She repeated the words back to him in her language. He repeated them in his. Some of them came out wrong, and she made a sound he had learned over 2 days to recognize as laughter, and he made a sound that was the closest he could manage. The mug she had brought out that morning was still on the porch, cold now. She stood, and he watched her go to the porch and pick it up and disappear inside briefly, and come back with 2 mugs that were hot and cross the clearing toward him. She stopped 2 meters away and held one out. He had no idea what was in it. He did not know if his body could process it. He would need to run tests and check 3 different biological compatibility charts before he could consider drinking it. He took it with both hands. He held it. The warmth of it came through his palms. He looked down at it and then at her, and she nodded once, small and simple, and sat back down in the grass with her own mug. He did not drink it. She did not push him to. Later, when he filed his final mission report, he would write it properly, with all the technical language and all the required fields and all the data the council needed. He would document the contact, the biological readings, the translator logs, the timeline. But at the end, in the notes field, he wrote what he actually meant. Subject is not fearless. Subject is brave. These are not the same thing. We were watching for the wrong response. We thought the absence of fear meant the absence of danger. We did not consider that it might mean something had learned to walk alongside dangerous things without becoming one. We were afraid of the wrong thing. He paused there. Then he added one more line, that we should have been afraid of a galaxy without them. He submitted the report. Across the clearing, Dara was watching a bird she had apparently been looking for all week, moving slowly through the canopy above them. She had her notebook out, and she was drawing it, unhurried, careful, glad that the animal was healthy. Ren sat in the grass with the warm mug in his hands and watched her work and felt, for the first time since leaving home, that he had found a place that made sense.